What is up, everybody? I just got done dunking my face in ice water and just vigorously rubbing it with banana peels for the last hour and a half. But now I'm here for another stream with our producer and intern extraordinaire, Eli.
What's
Everybody
going on?
salute Eli. Um, I was thinking about something today because um, our friend of the Midwestern Marx Institute and executive board member or executive chairman of the American Communist Party, Haz al-Din, invented this idea of MAGA communism, which is basically the idea that MAGA represents the most advanced anti-establishment and even in some ways anti-capitalist sentiment in American politics. This idea that a lot of Trump's base are people who are disillusioned with the system, who are mad that they're paying, so much money for groceries while they're making so little in wages, which are things that, as like political theorists, we understand are rooted in capitalism, but which a lot of regular working class people just feel, sort of implicitly and inherently. And Eli and I had a wrestling coach who was hardcore MAGA, like about
Oh
as
yeah,
hardcore
for
MAGA as you
sure.
can get. But that guy, I swear to God, I mean, his political positions aren't that much different than mine as a communist. He is just anti-establishment, opposed to the system. Feels like he's getting ripped off by the big banks and corporations, and you don't see that as much from the liberals. So yeah, I was just wondering what you think of that, Eli, and what you make of the MAGA phenomenon in general.
Yeah, I would say that honestly, if you replaced MAGA with communism, it's like pretty similar. And he does like you guys agreed a lot on your values, especially your traditional values and your dislike of liberals, especially.
Yes, that's always easy point of connection there with the MAGA people is just to point out how ridiculous the liberals are. But I mean, it's true. Like in terms of economics, he was like, we should get rid of the big banks, get rid of the big corporations, farmers and working people should own their own land. Like their consciousness, their where they're at politically is so close to being something, like radically progressive. And that sort of, convinced me that the MAGA communism theory was legit and accurate, that like MAGA is sort of where the anti-establishment energy in America is right now. And that makes a lot of people upset to hear, people who want to have faith in like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez who sell us out over and over and over again. But that's the case, just because they don't fit into the traditional, quote unquote left doesn't mean they're not the ones opposing the system the most. But today we're gonna talk about Jackson Hinkle, our boy, our comrade, our homie who is in Yemen right now, meeting with the Houthis, causing an absolute uprising on Twitter from right wingers and quote unquote left wingers alike. So we're going to be talking about that, talking about Jackson Hinkle derangement syndrome, as we call it, and what we got coming in the future for the American Communist Party. But we'll get into that right after the intro.
High Sheriff Hazard is a hard man to be. High Sheriff is his only plan. He digs through pockets, takes what he can, for he's High Sheriff Hazard. He caught me one evening, and here's what he said. You look like a Russian, you look like a red. And if you're fond of your skin and your head, beware the High Sheriff of Hazard.
All right, folks, feel free to shoot your questions, comments, or concerns in the chat, and I'll try to get to them. If you absolutely want me to respond to one of your questions, send it as a super chat, and I will get to it before the end of the stream for sure. We are a completely people's-funded institute. All of our revenue comes from Patreon, from our super chats, from direct PayPal donations, other than the classes and journals and books that we sell. But yes, no corporate or outside sources here. We are going to bring you the truth without any corporate influence involved. Molly McGuire says, but MAGA's dialectics suck. Well, yes, I mean, very correct. Very true. Something that if you talk to a lot of MAGA people, you'll find is very true in almost every case. But this is what we mean. MAGA is not the most advanced political consciousness. MAGA is not a communist, completely pro-working class consciousness. It's muddled in all sorts of petty bourgeois, and imperialist ideology. Of course, there are so many contradictions within MAGA. But it's far more advanced than, say, PMC liberalism. It's far closer to a communist consciousness than, a lot of the, identity politics obsessed liberals that we deal with in the world today. And that's why we say it's the most advanced consciousness, or not the most, but as far as the political movements that have prominence and have power and have influence in America, it's one of the most advanced in terms of its consciousness, one of the most class conscious political movements in the country. And that can upset you or whatever, but it's an objective fact when you talk to these people that they're aligned on a lot of pro-working class and anti-imperialist issues. In the same, they're aligned with the communists in many ways. And yes, there are contradictions within that. There are all sorts of semblances of false consciousness in MAGA, but that's why we have to meet them where they're at. That's why we have to do the job of educating and organizing them, as well as anyone else who's in the working class, in the working masses. And that's what we're doing here today. Respond to the dox allegations. Allegations? When have I ever doxed anybody? I've been doxed repeatedly. I had my phone number leaked by Seabass. Prex Ben organized a campaign of libertarians to email my workplace and demand that they fire me. Hashtag free speech. Who else? That guy Dinesh, a guy with 1.7 million followers who, praise Allah, has now been banned from every platform for scamming and doxing people. But he released my place of employment and their phone number and their email and had people do a mass campaign to try and get me fired there. So I don't know what you mean by the dox allegations, but I've certainly been a doxing victim, not to play the victim. Oh my God. Why are there so many trolls today? I'm going to put you all in timeout till you learn to behave. Yes, most potential, absolutely. Jackson Hinkle modernity, yeah. I feel like the people who don't like Jackson are the people who don't understand the internet and internet culture and meme culture and how many people are actually influenced by that. Because, a lot of people would dismiss it as just internet stuff. But it's more than that, people are legitimately influenced by the memes that they see on Instagram or on Twitter. As, maybe silly as that sounds, it's the reality. We're all products of our environment and our material conditions, and what we consume on social media is part of that. And Jackson sort of knows how to hijack that and inject communist politics into it. He's very good at that. He's better than anyone I know. And this is something that I've been doing on TikTok for years. It's something I've taught Carlos to do on TikTok, X, Instagram, and YouTube through, years of practice and sharing what I've learned with him. It's something that I taught classes on, how to basically hijack the TikTok algorithm to infuse communist politics into people's brains and get them to join a, revolutionary pro-working class party like the ACP. So it's something that's useful, and I've seen how useful it is because we've gotten a lot of really hardworking and really productive cadre, a lot of party members in the party through social media, through Jackson's, even like his meme posting and stuff. So a lot of people look at that and they say, this is unserious. This is highly unserious, this Hinkle. He should instead be publishing books. And they ignore all of the books and all of the theoretical journals that we actually do publish as a party, like Red America. But they see the meme posting and the algorithm hijacking is unserious. And it's like, I'm sorry, I hate to break this to you, but not that many people read books nowadays. People's attention spans are shortened. People, the majority of people, at least in younger generations, get their news through social media. They don't get it through reading Washington Post or CNN. One sec. I gotta put my iPad on Do Not Disturb. By the way, this is the last stream that I'll be doing for my iPad. The very last stream. We made enough moolah from you guys and from Patreon and all those things for me to get a laptop. So I'm still gonna build. I'm having one of my wrestlers who I coach build me a desktop computer, but I am also gonna get a gaming laptop, which will really be a streaming laptop. So this is the last stream where I'll be limited. But what was I talking about? Yeah, most people our age get their news and understand the world around them and geopolitics through social media. So it's any modern political party that's not utilizing social media is just shooting themselves in the foot. You have all these Marxists and even a lot of older Marxists who are intelligent when it comes to theory and whatnot, saying, social media doesn't matter. Some of them say, we need to go to people's workplaces. We need to go to the steel workers and the mine workers. We can't be on TikTok. And it's like, well, a lot of the steel workers and the mine workers and the railroad workers are on TikTok. They scroll through TikTok during their breaks. It's a very useful tool to reach people. Now, it means nothing if you don't translate that into real life, if you don't translate that into the actual organizing of workplaces, but it's a tool to create that and push that forward. And I mean, during the Arab Spring in the Middle East and North Africa, the U.S. basically used the internet to unite and forge together terrorist groups who could then overthrow the Syrian and Libyan governments. The internet and social media were a massive tool for sowing unrest. The NED, the National Endowment for Democracy, which is just a private version of the CIA, is incredibly involved online, probably smearing groups like the ACP, but also using bot accounts and using, giant accounts that they've either bought from people or hijacked or whatever, like Kings and Generals, a YouTube history channel that we reviewed once here on Midwestern Marx, which you can check out. They use those to push regime change propaganda in target countries and here in the U.S. to both get U.S. citizens to support our government overthrowing a foreign government, but also to get people in the target country to turn against their own government. And this is why communist countries like Cuba and China are forced to control the internet, or the DPRK. This is why they're forced to have the so-called Great Firewall in China, because they know that the U.S. is using the internet as a tool to foment regime change. So if we know that the ruling class is using the internet as a tool, why would we ourselves shoot ourselves in the foot and say, no, we're not going to use the internet as a tool? We're just going to publish books that nobody reads because we're purists who refuse to acknowledge that technology evolves and forms of communication evolve over time. It would be silly. And a lot of people just hate Jackson because of his success in these areas. Like Gabriel Rockhill, his only evidence that Jackson is supposedly a Fed is that Jackson has a lot of social media followers. right? And as somebody who is, of a younger generation than Gabriel, for one, but two, have studied social media algorithms and how to use these algorithms to grow, and have put it into practice by growing 7 TikTok accounts over 100,000 followers. I recognize that it's not, that's not a sign that Jackson's a Fed. He just knows how to do it. He's extremely prolific, right? He puts out a large quantity of high quality content. He puts out stuff that, yes, is engagement bait, but he knows how to use social media as a tool to spread his message. He's very good at it. He's got skills in this area. And a lot of older Marxists like Gabriel Rockhill, who don't understand those skills on any level, say, oh, this means he must be a Fed. And what is this other than, rejecting success? Saying, oh, if any Marxist is successful in popularizing our message and our core values, then they must be a Fed. If any Marxist learns how to utilize social media algorithms to push a pro-working class politics, they must be a federal agent. Okay, well then anybody who succeeds, you're going to automatically dismiss as a Fed. And how the hell are we supposed to win in this country? How the hell are we supposed to convince people to be on our side if we ostracize and push out of the left anybody who's actually successful in reaching a large audience? I mean, it's quite ridiculous. And if you watch Noah's show from Monday, his call-in show, he debated a lot of people on Jackson. In particular, he debated one of the ACP's full-time most deranged haters named Lulu. Well, sorry, I don't want to say that because Lulu's actually not the most deranged. Lulu seems like she's actually somewhat good faith, and like she's actually bought into a lot of the smears and lies about the ACP. But Noah was just dismantling these smears about Jackson one by one so easily because they're so weak. They're all rooted in, oh, he's successful. He knows other successful people. He must be a federal agent, even though he's pushing the exact opposite politics of what the feds want. And now there's these smears about what Jackson's doing in Yemen. You had independent journalists like Richard Medhurst. So disappointing to see this from him because I like Richard. But you had big alt media journalists like him and, of course, Fiorella Isabel and others coming out and saying, Jackson's a Fed. Jackson is giving away Yemeni Houthi military positions to the U.S. so the U.S. can bomb them with zero evidence, making these heinous, disgusting allegations with zero evidence. And the worst, most disgusting, sick, fucking genocidal, psychopathic Zionists on the internet, like Dr. Eli David, picked up this narrative by Jackson and started pushing it. Started pushing it as a joke, but also as a way to smear Jackson, who's one of their number one enemies because he's anti-Zionist. They started saying, thank you, Jackson, our friend. Jackson is a Mossad agent. He's giving away Houthi positions. Thank you, Jackson. And it's a joke for them because they actually hate Jackson. But as the leftists who are pushing the same narrative as disgusting Hitlerian, Hitlerite fucks like Dr. Eli David, you should stop for a second and think, holy shit, I'm pushing the same narrative as one of the most disgusting genocidal Zionists on the planet. Somebody who cheers on and celebrates the mass murder of children openly on his Twitter page. I'm aligning with that guy. That guy's pushing the same narrative that I am. I'm teaming up with Dr. Eli David to smear one of the largest voices who's pushing a pro-Palestine line, who's pushing a line in favor of the Arab resistance. Like, come on. If my politics were ever lining up with Dr. Eli David and these genocidal Jewish supremacist Zionist, Hitlerites, essentially, I would do some deep self-reflection at that point. But that's what Lenin told us about these people. This is exactly what Vladimir Lenin said about the Social Democrats and about the wreckers who spent all this time bitching about the Bolsheviks over, petty things. he said that, these people are objectively right wing. They objectively align themselves with reactionary forces like Zionism. What's new with the party? Well, we got those guys in Yemen. We have the formation of our central committee coming up. The chapters are continuing their work on the ground. And we are continuing our work with the drayage truckers on the East Coast, trying to get them unionized, giving them education. We recently released, actually just today on YouTube, we dropped our documentary showing the struggle of the drayage truckers and what we were doing to help get them educated and organized. So you can check that out on the American Communist Party YouTube channel. What's your opinion on Californian separatism? I don't think that would solve anything. I think if there's any state that's going to separate, it's probably California or Texas. But hopefully it doesn't happen. Balkanization is now what the U.S. needs. We fought wars to preserve the Union and keep the country together. Splitting the country up into little different capitalist enclaves would just turn us into Europe. We need socialism, not just to split the whole country up. The problem with the left, or the biggest problem with the left, is that they focus on cultural issues almost more than class issues itself. No, they absolutely do. Not even almost. They absolutely do. And this is perfect for the Democrats because Nancy Pelosi and even like AOC and the left wing of the Democratic Party are controlled by corporate America. They're controlled by their donors. They're controlled by other forces who represent the Democratic Party establishment, the elites. So what do you do in order to distinguish yourself from the Republicans, in order to make yourself seem different from the Republicans, if you're not in terms of issues of economics and imperialism, the issues that actually matter, foreign policy and domestic economic issues that affect people's real day-to-day lives? On those issues, the Democrats are essentially the same as the Republicans. So how do they distinguish themselves? Cultural issues and social issues. The Republicans think this about bathrooms, so we think that about bathrooms. And we're going to talk about bathrooms all day long to show how much different we are than the Republicans, and to virtue signal, and to, morally grandstand and pretend that we're morally superior to them. These cultural and identity politics issues are a perfect avenue for people who want to pretend like they're different from the Republicans, who want to pretend like they're, left-wing and progressive and fighting to move society forward, when they're actually beholden to the same corporations that the Republican Party is. So that's the strategy of the Democrats. It's a perfect strategy for them, especially when all the George Floyd stuff was going on. That's when I feel like this strategy was really, came to be the hegemony. The dominant ideology in the country became, progressive, quote unquote progressive on cultural issues, even though I would disagree with the idea that democratic and liberal cultural values are actually progressive, but then of course remaining right wing on economic and foreign policy issues. This only serves to divide workers. Absolutely. That's the other utility of that strategy, is it keeps people divided and at each other's throats over these cultural issues, when in reality, we agree on all of the economic issues. Pretty much everybody in the country agrees that we should end the wars and reinvest the money that we're spending on endless wars in the American people. I know pretty much everyone I wrestle with thinks that, whether they consider themselves a Democrat or a Republican or whatever. But they're able to keep people divided with the bathrooms and with other cultural and social issues. We would mostly agree with class issues, not cultural. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Brent. Eddie, what do you think about UBI? Good question. I mean, listen, if they enacted UBI tomorrow, I would take that and I would love it. I'd be like, thank you for that. I'm going to use this to pay off my college, student loans and pay for my rent and things like that. But I think it would be ultimately offset by inflation. It would be maybe a small form of wealth redistribution, but ultimately the only purpose that would serve is to maintain capitalism. The inventor of UBI was actually Milton Friedman, who's like one of the main capitalist economists of our era, one of the most dogmatically pro-capitalist economists, more like a dogmatist, more like a preacher of capitalist religion. But basically, he came up with the idea of the negative income tax, where you take some money from the top and redistribute it to the bottom, so the people at the bottom don't get so angry and downtrodden that they overthrow the entire system. It's a way to maintain capitalism and keep it going, which is, I think, what Andrew Yang wanted to do as well. And I mean, it would serve that purpose, but ultimately, if people have $2,000 extra a month, what is your landlord going to do? Your landlord's going to jack up the price of your rent because he knows that you have more money. The grocery stores are going to do that as well. All of the sellers of essential products, what in Marxism we call the means of subsistence, the things that people need to reproduce themselves and continue to live, to survive, the prices of all of those things would inflate because they would know that people have more money to spend on them. So ultimately, it would be, a very tiny Band-Aid on the gaping wounds of our system, which needs to be radically transformed. And that radical transformation goes much farther than UBI. We need land redistribution, the nationalization, of major corporations, a massive crackdown on Wall Street, the nationalization of the big banks. All of these things need to be enacted. And, maybe we could do UBI as a form of wealth redistribution under socialism, when we can also put rent controls on the landlords and say, guess what? You're not allowed to increase the rent, even though people have more money. So under socialism, it could be a good policy, but under capitalism, it's pretty moot, because the capitalists can just increase the prices of everything. But I'd take that $2,000 and use it. If they enact UBI, I won't be complaining too much. Did you get a chance to look into Greater Idaho a little bit? It seems like there's actually a lot of people in East Washington who are on board with the Greater Idaho idea, who want to become part of Idaho. I got to ask my brother about it, who lives out in Idaho. But I'm surprised that there's so many people in Washington who want to join Idaho. I didn't look into why. I'm sure there's a real reason why. Otherwise, you wouldn't have such a large percentage of the East Washington population wanting it. But yeah, maybe I'll look into it soon. Democrats are dying. It seems that way. There was a poll recently that was released showing that nationwide support for the Democratic Party is now as low as 20%. 20% support for the Democrats, which just goes to what I'm saying, that the popular anti-establishment energy is in MAGA right now. And, we're at a place with our system and with our government and with our society where whichever party is most able to capture the anti-establishment, anti-government energy of the working class, that's going to be the party that controls the whole country, the politics, the government. And that's the Republicans right now. They're able to, under Trump, pretend like they're fighting the system more so than the Democrats are with their, identity politics, pandering and whatnot. And, taking it, looking at it from another angle, who are the Democrats going to run in 2028? It looks to me right now like the Democrats are prepping Bernie Sanders and AOC to run together on one ticket. I don't know who would be president, who would be vice president, but it seems like that's the direction they're moving. Why are they moving that direction? Well, because of the reason that I just said. Whoever is able to capitalize on and utilize the anti-establishment energy in this country, the energy of the American working class, is going to be the party that wins. And I'm sure the Democrats realize they need to pivot. They need to pivot to being more fake anti-establishment, like Bernie and AOC. So that's what I think is going to happen. Bernie's like 700 years old, so I don't know how that's going to work. Maybe they're just gonna use him as like a puppet, like a Weekend at Bernie's type thing. But I don't know. I don't think AOC is that popular because what they really need to win is the Rust Belt states, the Midwest, Wisconsin, Iowa, Pennsylvania, Ohio. These are the states that they need to win. And AOC is not popular in those states at all. So we'll see. Liberalism has destroyed the left on purpose, yet PSL, CBUSA, DSA, RCA still aligned with it. Absolutely. I don't even think they realize they're doing it. They're just caught in this traditional American idea of what is the left. And of course, the left in America is liberalism. It's the Democratic Party, which is liberal. That's how it's portrayed to us. That's how it's pitched to us. And these other parties have sort of internalized that in a lot of ways. They've internalized a lot of this liberalism and a lot of this identitarianism, which Balkan Tourist says divides society. Absolutely. People from the Balkans understand that better than anybody. The Balkans is a place where the U.S. pushed this rhetoric of, identity. Everyone be obsessed with your own identity and your own nation. Your own race, your own ethnicity. And that led to a horrific civil war, which is really still ongoing. But that tore apart former Yugoslavia, this multi-ethnic united socialist society, and turned it into a bunch of warring, ethno-nationalist countries, basically. The pan left this is a great comment right here. Thank you for leaving this, my friend, Indy Dilly. The pan left ought to be split, and the ACP would absorb the progressive communists that prioritize class, while the progressive national socialists that prioritize culture stay out. Exactly what we want to achieve. Those elements of the left, the existing left that are redeemable, which there are elements that are redeemable, as much as that, as much as some people may hate to admit that or hate to say that, there are elements of the American left that are redeemable. There are people in the American left who could do good work, who really care about class struggle more than, culture wars. Those people, we're trying to absorb them into the ACP, bring them into the ACP, build bridges with them. And there's all these psychos, there's all these, hardcore liberal, essentially fascists, who are calling for our death and stuff and want to bomb and shoot us and spend all day complaining about us because we're not aligned with them on culture war issues. And I'm sure a lot of these are probably literal CIA agents, but, those are the elements where just shoo, get away. You're ruining everything. You've been ruining everything for years. You're doing Fed work or you are actual Feds. Get the hell away from the left. Curious to hear your thoughts on Brett O'Shea, Rev Left Radio. Rev Left was really important in my initial political education, but it's sad to see him dog on MAGA communism and ignore ACP. Same. I mean, I pretty much echo your thoughts. I pretty much feel the same way. I really liked Rev Left Radio when I was first starting out. Listened to him all the time. I didn't know anything about Marxism. It was great to have a podcast that was actually focused on Marxist theory. I learned a lot from Rev Left Radio. I learned a lot from their Che Guevara episode. That was before I really started reading Che and reading biographies about him by professional biographers. But it was useful when I was first starting out. It was useful to listen to their episode on Thomas Sankara. Their Ho Chi Minh Vietnam War episode was cool. Some of their Stalin episodes were cool. But yeah, I mean, Brett he's a Maoist, and that comes with some interesting ideas. And he dogs on the ACP and MAGA communism. And it's he's turned into a theory cell. He's turned into somebody who doesn't try to make a unique analysis of the country that they're living in, but someone who rather, is just obsessed with old books, old theory, and trying to impose Maoism on America. We can learn from Mao. We can draw things from Mao. But we have very unique conditions that are very much different to 1949 China. So I think his analysis is sort of outdated and dogmatic. What are the social values of ACP? Tolerance. We have tolerance for people's social values. We have tolerance for, people who think differently about these issues, who are on different sides of the culture war. All we really care about is advancing the class struggle and the struggle against imperialism. Oligarchs have always acquired their wealth by stealing it from the working class. Yes, that is how capitalism and feudalism and so-called primitive accumulation works. So glad you still did the show, Eddie. Thank you. Thanks for coming, Logan. Will BRICS have the balls to create its own currency? I don't know. Probably not. China might push that, but remains to be seen. I don't know what their long-term strategy is in terms of currency. Besides, getting off the gold standard. Bernie Sanders is a comprador fake socialist. Yes, his role is to co-opt radical anti-establishment energy and filter it right back into the Democratic Party. It didn't begin that way. Bernie started as a real legit anti-establishment politician running as an independent, not as a Democrat. But he's been a part of the Democratic Party for about 30 years now, and you can't spend that long in the Democratic Party without them sinking their hooks into you, sinking their claws into you. I remember when Carlos and I were working for the Bernie campaign, there was an event called the March Against Corporate Greed. And basically, it's an event where the Democrats get together and the Democrat presidential candidates get together and they all donate money from their campaign, money that either their supporters have given them or, corporations have given them. In Bernie's case, he was only taking small dollar donations from his actual supporters. They take that money and they give it to the Democratic Party. They give it to the establishment, essentially. And it's a big signal of loyalty to the Democratic Party elite, is what this event really is. So at this event, Bernie staged the March Against Corporate Greed, which was great. Instead of just, sucking up to the Democratic Party, we all went and marched against their corruption. But then we all went into a room. We march against corruption. We all have these signs. Corporate greed must end. Billionaires bad, blah, blah, blah. And then we go inside and we're eating dinner together. They have food for us. And we're watching Bernie give a speech at this event. And we're all expecting him, everyone at my table at least, is expecting Bernie to tell the Democratic Party to piss off. We were expecting him to go up there and say, no, my donations, my campaign money comes from the people, comes from the working class. It comes from small dollar donations from my actual supporters, not corporations. So I'm not going to give a dime of this money to the Democratic establishment, to the party elite. But instead of doing that, Bernie goes up on stage, gives a speech talking about how the Democrats are better than Trump and how Republicans bad, and then gives a bunch of money that the people like me making minimum wage had, or maybe a little bit above minimum wage, had given to the campaign because we believed in it, gives like thousands of those dollars to the Democratic Party, to the establishment, and gives this speech basically sucking them off. And let me tell you, that sucked the wind out of the room so fast. That sucked all of the energy and motivation out of the room because we're like, we thought we were marching against this system. We thought we were marching against the Democratic establishment and the corporate elites. Now you're going up there and literally giving them our money and giving this speech about how great they are. So that's the role that Bernie plays in America today. Filtering radical left-wing energy back towards the Democrats. All right, I'll continue taking questions when I get back from going to the bathroom. But you guys, I'm not going to play a video of myself wrestling this time during the intermission because I haven't received any super chats. And the people need to be punished because I need money. Just kidding. But I'll be back. All right, chat. I'm back. What are we thinking? I want to hear from the chat on this. What are we thinking about the face bath banana man? Ashton Hall, I believe his name is. He's the guy who went viral for showing his morning routine, where he dunks his face in sparkling water like 37 times before 5 a.m. And then he eats a banana and rubs the peel on his face, which is good. It's potassium. I did a parody video of it today, and I rubbed a banana all over my face. And I'm not going to lie, my face kind of feels good. It kind of feels healthy from all the potassium that I got. But what's up, Golden Parenti? I thought it was like, do you guys not do that? That's what Iowa ACP chapter does every morning. Each one of our people gets up at 3 a.m. They dunk their face in ice water. They work out. They start an online business. They teach like 13 wealth classes, and then they go to work at 6 a.m. That's what every single one of us do. But I mean, clearly the guy's a badass, right? Clearly the guy's a beast. He's jacked. He's fast. He was a college football player. He's clearly on his grind. But I don't know. These videos are so ridiculous because there's obviously like somebody who's got to pay the bills, somebody who's got to take care of their wife and kids, who's just a normal working class person. They don't have time to get up and get in an ice bath and get in the infrared sauna and go to the gym, right? There's too much to be done during the day. So there's a certain level of economic stability that you got to have in order to live that lifestyle. And it usually comes from being like a podcaster or an influencer or something. And then, you know, they're selling this lifestyle to other people when the vast majority of the country can't live that lifestyle because they're busy trying to put food on the table. So there's that. That critique's been made a million times, and it's true. I still find inspiration in these people like David Goggins or whatever, but you know, at the same time, it's like working out is fun. You know, working out is like an infinite dopamine and serotonin factory in your body. It makes you feel good. It's like a drug. So, you know, working out all day isn't like it's tough, I don't think, as working concrete all day. You know, that was one of the things that working concrete from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day. We didn't work that late every day, but at least 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day, sometimes as late as 9 p.m. This shit was crazy. Non-union concrete company. You know, when I worked that, it made me realize, wow, wrestling is not hard. Sports are not hard. Like, sports are fun. Sports are like a feel-good factory in your body. You know, it's hard work. You got to force yourself to go to practice sometimes when you don't want. But you never leave practice feeling like shit, right? You leave concrete feeling like shit. I mean, you feel like you got something accomplished. You feel like you worked hard, but you're getting ripped off. You're not getting paid anything, and you're tired. You know you're going to have to go to bed early, wake up, and do it all again the next day for 5-6 days a week. So, you know, that's the other thing with these like influencers who are pitching their morning routine or, you know, saying they're the toughest guys in the world because they go for runs all day. It's like, yeah, but compared to working a desk job where you got to be locked in typing on the computer 8 hours a day, that sounds pretty good to me. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but yeah, there's that. And then the guy, I really wish I had my computer now. It arrived Saturday. If you weren't here earlier, this is the last stream that I'll be doing for my iPad. Praise Allah. But I wish I could pull up this guy's Instagram to show you guys right now, but I can't. It's also like the epitome of the Instagram influencer, right? Where they create a highlight tape of their life, which, you know, is not how they actually live on a day-to-day basis. They just take the highlights, the most interesting moments, or they, do things like dunk their face in ice water and put on designer clothes that are handed to them by their bodyguards every morning. They do things like this because they know it will blow up on Instagram, and they pitch it as if it's how they live day to day. And then they parlay that into selling you classes. I'm a success coach. I'm a life coach. I'm a wealth building coach. And that's what this guy, Ashton Hall, is. And I'm sure he's making a lot of money now that he has 9.3 million followers on Instagram, which salute to the man. I respect it. But, ultimately it's just selling like an unattainable, really unachievable lifestyle as a way to escape capitalism, as the only way to build wealth under capitalism. And it's pretty telling about our system as a whole that 9.3 million people, I'm sure a lot of people like me just follow him as a joke, but a lot of people actually like this guy, and I think he's spitting facts. But I think it's very telling that, so many people think you have to wake up at 3 a.m. every day and dunk your face in sparkling water in order to accumulate any wealth under this system. I don't think it should be that hard. I think if you work your ass off all day, not only should we reduce the hours that you have to work, but you should get paid better. What else? That, and just like, this is more of a moralistic critique, maybe less of a Marxist critique, but the value system is just not the same as my value system. Like, the guy shows himself doing what on his Instagram? He shows himself wearing and buying designer brand name clothes. He shows himself driving expensive cars. He shows himself getting recognized by people on the street for being famous. And he shows himself working on his own hygiene and his own health, which are good things, but, they're vain. They're self-focused. There's very little about his family, his friends, his community in general. When he does show himself with friends, it's usually his barber who's making him look better, of course. So it's very egotistical and self-centered as well. And then what I thought was interesting, I really wish I could pull this up right now. Next week, we're going to have the best show ever when I have my computer finally. But he did have, he talks about taking care of his family financially. So there is some mention of his family, right? And there's one post with his mom where he bought his mom a very expensive car, a very expensive vehicle. And, there's a quote that I always go back to in the Communist Manifesto that says, under bourgeois society, relations between people, or the family relations between the family, basically become mere monetary relations. So they become relationships that are about money, like women who stay with their abusive husbands because they're economically dependent on them, which is extremely common. This guy's page is basically a representation of that. I'm a good son. I'm a good family man. I love my mom because I can buy her things. Because I'm wealthy and I spend all day focusing on myself and my business and the accumulation of wealth for me and me alone, I'm able to buy my mom expensive things, and that's why I'm a good family man. So relations between the family become based completely in money and wealth and what you're able to purchase for them in terms of commodities. So I think it's interesting. I spent like 3 hours, not 3 hours, but I spent a long time scrolling through that guy's Instagram page yesterday and thinking about what he represents and what I make of it all. This whole meme. And I think, a lot of liberals are mocking him because he's pushing self-improvement, and they just hate self-improvement. They're like, no, you should be depressed all the time and just think about how bad of a person you are because you're white or whatever. And this guy is pushing self-improvement and the idea that you can better yourself and improve yourself in this life and make something of yourself, and they don't like that. Of course, that I disagree with. That's what I like about the guy. He's clearly a badass. He clearly is working hard. I'm sure he's on steroids. I've seen his workout videos, and there's no way that physique is attainable without steroids if you're working out the way he does. But he is a hard worker, which, all power to him there. But there's a lot of things that he represents, that reinforce bourgeois society. He's certainly part of the capitalist superstructure. Eddie, this is the allure of American soft power. That's why all of these reactionaries want to migrate here. Very, very true, Emilia. That's why America seems so appealing to even countries like Cuba, where they have, universal housing and universal healthcare and all of these necessities taken care of. But because of the embargo, they don't have the same level of consumerism. They aren't able to purchase all the consumer goods that we are here in the U.S., the luxury goods. And this has been one of the successes of Chinese socialism, is that, they were like the first socialist country to offer consumer goods to their people, even as much or even more so than the U.S. does. They're surpassing us in the kind of phones and cars that they're able to give their people. And, this was also one of the things, I hate to say it, but this is one of the things that led to the collapse of the USSR. This was one of the main propaganda points from the U.S. was that you guys, only have one kind of cereal. We have 20 kinds of cereal. And that works especially on young kids. Look at all these Jordan shoes that we have in America that you can't have in the Soviet Union. This is communism. Communism sucks, even though you have free healthcare and free education and free daycare and free housing and free utilities. And now you're going to have to get robbed by landlords and utility companies and shit once capitalism comes back. But the consumerism was a way that they sold capitalism to the working class people in socialist countries. And this is one of the things that China's been able to do. Like I said, give their people the same level, the same choice of consumer goods, if not more, in a lot of industries. So, but it's a very important part of the U.S. soft power strategy, and it's working on Cuba. I hate to say it, but the younger generation of Cubans, a lot of them have fallen for the allure of American Western consumerism, for the allure of having these consumer goods that they're blocked off from right now due to the embargo. Now, if capitalism were to be reinstated in Cuba, deaths due to lack of healthcare would increase, malnutrition would increase, infant mortality would increase, literacy would decrease, education would decrease. Every single metric for standard of human life would go down in Cuba if capitalism was reinstated, just like it did in the Soviet Union and every former socialist country that's ever existed. Standard of life would go down because people would no longer have universal access to the necessities of life, but they would be able to buy 20 different kinds of cereal instead of one. So that's what, a lot of people are tricked into wanting. And, due to the embargo, Cuba's not able to do what China does and give their people both. They're not able to. They're an island. They're only able to produce so much because they're a tiny little island that doesn't have, all the resources that the globe has to offer. So they're blocked off from those by the U.S. military and the U.S. government. And they have to make do with what they have. And they still offer their people, healthcare and all these things. But it's a very powerful strategy that the U.S. has devised there in terms of cutting people off from consumer goods and then blaming it on socialism until they overthrow their government and lose healthcare and housing and all the necessities of life, but gain access to consumer goods that they can't even fucking afford. Yo, we got a super chat. Let's go, baby. First one of the night. I'm rich. Let's go. Paid off my laptop that I just bought. Let's go. Logan Dietz, the GOAT, the greatest Midwestern Marx chatter of all time. Apologies to everyone else who have given like $50 super chats. What would Miami be like under communism? We would send all the gusanos back to Cuba. That's what Trump should really be doing. Anybody, even if you were born in the U.S., if you were born to like a Cuban landlord who got expelled by the revolution, you got to go back. That's what ICE should be doing. Just kidding. I don't know what Miami would be like. That'd be a struggle. It would be like the heart of reaction. That's for sure. It would be one of the main places in the country where people would be fighting back against the working class government. Because of all the reactionaries who fled from Cuba. But, even the consciousness in Miami is changing now. Like, people are, believe it or not, less anti-communist than what they used to be because conditions here in the U.S. are so bad. They were always promised this better life in the U.S. and then a lot of times they can't afford healthcare when they need it or things like this. And then they, know people in Cuba still or look at Cuba and they see, well, they don't have the consumer goods that we have or whatever, the same level of quote unquote free speech. But, at least their people have free healthcare. A lot of that, this happened with Carlos's family. His mom needed an operation and all of these Cuban gusanos, these Miami anti-communist Cubans were like, go to Cuba. Get the operation for free. And Carlos was like, what the hell? You told me Cuba's terrible. Why do they have free healthcare while, old ladies aren't able to get healthcare here in the U.S., the richest, freest country on earth? Freedom is the freedom to not die when you get a disease that's treatable. Give Miami to Cuba based. That's what we should really do. We should begin the era of Cuban imperialism. Cuban social imperialism. Ron DeSantis will be in a gulag soon. Who would want Miami anyway? Hey, Miami Vice is a fun video game. So they got that going for them, I guess. Gusano Bay camp. Oh, yeah, we're definitely putting all the Gusanos in Guantanamo Bay. Absolutely. That's happening. Thank you, John Freeze, for the $10 super chat. Let's go. John gets a double flex for that one. Thank you, brother. Any thoughts about the film school in Cuba and the current Cuban films and music? I don't know much about the film school. And I really don't know too much about the music coming out of Cuba. I think it's smart for them to invest in entertainment media. I think it's smart for them to promote movies and music the same way that they promote athletics as a way to promote the country and promote the Cuban Revolution, right? They do amazing in the Olympics comparatively for how small they are. And that's because they actively invest in training athletes because they know how it looks when they're kicking ass in sports. And one of the main strategies, actually, we were talking about U.S. strategies against Cuba. One of the main strategies right now is actually turning Cuban musicians and Cuban artists against the revolution and getting them to sing songs about overthrowing the Cuban government and how bad the Cuban government is and how bad communism is and how they censor free speech and art and all of this shit. So all of these artists who moved out of Cuba to the U.S. to get rich are being commissioned to write songs about how evil Cuba is. And, there have been Cuban songs in favor of the revolution. The Cuban government has tried to counteract this, but a lot of them haven't been great. A lot of them have been not as high quality as the ones being produced by all the money here in the U.S. So it's something that they need to invest in. I don't know if it'll actually produce anything useful, hopefully. But yeah, art is, as it always has been, is being used as a tool of regime change. And anybody who's researched the Congress for Cultural Freedom or read Francis Stone Saunders' book, The Cultural Cold War, knows that art and music and movies and TV shows and theater have been used as a weapon of regime change for a long time. We barely got the movie Spartacus. Spartacus is possibly the most badass story and the most badass movie of the last century. and we almost didn't get it because it was suppressed by not just a publishing house, but by the CIA. The CIA caught wind of the book, and it was submitted to a publishing house who was like, hell yeah, this book is based. We're going to publish it. And the CIA said, hell no, you're not. And they told every other publisher, no, you're not. So the book was blackballed, and then the guy had to publish it independently. And because it was so good, it blew up anyways, and eventually they made a movie out of it. But, there's so much control of art in this country, which is also why the free speech argument falls flat. Because there is no free speech in this country. There's massive suppression and even censorship, outright censorship of speech. Favorite examples of communist media? Well, recent examples, this might surprise some people, but the Batman 2022 with Robert Pattinson. If you don't know why that's a communist movie, check out my review of it. You can just search Midwestern Marx Batman 2022. Shit is gas. Best Batman movie I've ever watched. Better than the Christopher Nolan trilogy, which I also loved. This Batman was literally like a communist. And the Riddler was a perfect like caricature of a lot of online hyper online incels today, who are the kind of anti-ACP people who attack us all day. Or he's kind of like an anarchist, or I don't know. There's so much good social commentary in that movie. But as far as communist media, Motorcycle Diaries is good. Salt of the Earth is good. Probably my favorite is Voces Inocentes, which is about El Salvador and the U.S. war on El Salvador. The El Salvador Civil War, which was a civil war provoked and participated in and inflamed by the United States, of course. Tragic movie that shows like the reality of life on the ground at the time. Also was heavily suppressed. So you may not have heard of it, but please check it out. Voces Inocentes. Amazing film. There's others that I could think of, but those are the ones that come to mind. Does ACP have any intention of creating a list of media that is applauded by the party for learning? Oh, that's a good idea. You know who would be good for that, to task with that in the party, is Chet Osman. I think it's Osman. Everybody should follow Chet on X. He speaks Chinese, and he translates Chinese movies into English and does subtitles for them. So he's got a lot of really badass movies about China on his YouTube channel, Chet Osman, OZMUN, CHETOZMUN. I believe that's how it's spelled. But if you're a communist, you'll find it super interesting because obviously Chet's a communist. He's in the ACP, but he so the things that he posts are things that are related, to the Communist Party, or things that communists would find interesting. So, for example, there's one about the poverty alleviation programs and about like a Communist Party official who becomes corrupt and starts taking money from the people and not doing anything to help the rural village. So the rural villagers start rejecting him and they say, get out of here. We don't like communism. You're messing with us. Leave. And then this new lady comes in who's actually dedicated to communism and dedicated to the party and dedicated to helping the people. And she actually meets their needs and brings them economic development and helps bring them out of poverty. And the people turn and they start to like her and like communism. And, the whole message is serve the people, meet their needs. Don't be a corrupt opportunist piece of shit. Be dedicated to the masses and dedicated to pushing our society forward and lifting our people out of poverty and raising everything up together. So it's pretty badass. And it parallels Chinese society. In the 90s, they call it the wild 90s for a reason. There was a lot of corruption in the party. People being bought off by the Chinese bourgeoisie or the foreign imperialist bourgeoisie. And that's the main thing that Xi Jinping is famous for cracking down on and bringing it to an end. So it's just really cool to see art reflect that, Let's go, extra medium, workers rule. Couldn't agree more, brother. That's a double flex. That's 20 big booms. Boom, boom, boom. Imagine I did it 20 times. Let's go. That's enough to get a double chunk chocolate cookie. I'm sorry, you probably regret sending the super chat now. Workers rule, yes they do, and you're also a member, so thank you. Make sure to get your free PDF of Carlos's book, The Purity Fetish, which all of our Midwestern Marks members, I think $10 or above, get. So yeah, if you want to become a member, you get some perks with it. List of ACP media and literature would be so clutch. Yeah, that's a good idea. We should put something like that together. He's always on my timeline with clips of that show about G's dad. Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. That shit is so gas. It's his dad is like yelling at the corrupt people. He's like, "You disgust me. You corrupt pieces of shit. Get out of here. You screwed over these hardworking villagers. Get the fuck out of here." It's so based. It's like, yes. This is exactly what I imagine G's dad being like. Red 1983 is decent too, about American communists. Interesting. I've heard Comrade Detective with Channing Tatum is really good and really funny. It's meant to be like an over-the-top, communist sort of parody movie, but I guess it's actually really funny and badass. There's one famous scene where there's two detectives, and one of them's banging on the door, someone's door. He's like, come out here, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you. And the other guy comes up, he's like, man, calm down, don't beat the shit out of this guy. What would Lenin do? The other guy's like, whoa, what would Lenin do? And he goes, Lenin would fuck him up. And he runs and breaks down the door. Beats the shit out of the guy. Oh, it's the best scene ever. I haven't seen the whole movie. Kyle Pettis would be mad at me for not taking the time to watch it yet. The Young Marx is really good too. Also, that Chinese cartoon, The Leader, it's called. It's about Karl Marx's life. It's like an anime. The Leader, it's called. You guys should check that out too. It's like free on YouTube. It's fantastic. Arkansas is in the party. Yes, it is, baby. Make sure you join if you're in Arkansas. My arms look just like that when I was doing food service delivery as a local truck driver. Yeah, based. All working class people have muscles. I never got more jacked than when I did concrete for a summer. I wasn't even lifting very much. I was just doing concrete and lifting 2-3 days a week, maybe. And I was like, it was great. Everybody should do concrete. Is there potential for iShow Speed to become an ACP member? Absolutely. I'm working on it, man. That kid is awesome. I've never actually watched one of his streams, like one of his full shows. But he seems like the nicest, like most genuine guy I've ever seen build fame on the internet. There's a video of some girl asking him if he's a Zionist. He goes, no. He's like, why not? He's like, why would I be a Zionist? And he's like, leaves. That video's great. His video about China is great. He just seems so friendly. And like, I'm sure he's a gamer or does whatever on his stream, but he also like jumps over cars that are going full speed, which is like, damn, you gotta give him respect for that. If nothing else, jumping over a fucking car going full speed, he could die. He could, like, if you watch those videos, he would probably die if they hit him. He'd have to get very lucky to survive that. And he freaking jumped over two of them back to back. It's like, brother, speed is something awesome, LOL. I agree, man. Andy races Olympic sprinters. Yeah, he's pretty great. Anything about Pedro, the second emperor of Brazil, close to a communist or left-wing emperor? No, I haven't heard anything about him. We'll have to look into it. That sounds interesting. It's always interesting hearing, about basically socialism in countries past Like in the East, it was very popular. They had a much more collectivist, socialistic economic system than we had in the U.S. under, say, the Confederacy in the era of slavery, or what they had in Europe under feudalism. It was much more collectivistic in the East, which lends itself, of course, to building socialism in the modern day. Individualism is very much a Western. They're not to say individualism doesn't exist elsewhere, but it's very Western, and probably applies less to Latin America than North America, but still. He's got spirit, absolutely, and that's all you need. Hey, I show speed doesn't have to read theory. He can if he wants, but he's got the spirit. By the way, speaking of ACP and our famous comrades, Malumbo, our boy Malumbo, told me, or shared with me, some of his new music recently, and it is fire, and it's about Marxism, and he's going to record soon, and I think people are really going to like it, so I'm excited about the prospects upcoming for our media department and what we can do. By the way, I should have mentioned this earlier. We are now on Instagram and Facebook. The American Communist Party has a Facebook page where we are very active. We have an Instagram page where we're even more active. So I know not everybody uses X. Not everybody likes Twitter. X and Twitter is very important because it's the place where a lot of discourse stems from. It's the app with the most text, the most writing, or there are a lot of smart people sharing ideas. So it kind of creates and controls a lot of the online discourse in general. But still, these other outlets are very important. Facebook, a lot of people are on Facebook still, even though it gets made fun of as like a boomer app. Instagram, tons of people like only use Instagram and don't use Twitter at all. So that's a huge audience that we weren't hitting before. So make sure to follow the American Communist Party on Instagram. Like the Facebook page and join the Facebook group as well. The Facebook group has been badass, very active. People posting all the time, posting memes, posting updates about the party, posting questions, having conversations about theory and other things. So make sure to join that as well if you're on Facebook. I've been surprised at the success of the Facebook. I knew the Instagram was going to blow up quick, but interesting how many people still use Facebook. Any process on ACP becoming a band? Well, Noah does want to write a song. Well, Noah already wrote a song. And I think we're actually doing it now. So there's going to be a Midwestern March song soon. So yeah, ACP is a band. Eddie looks tired. I am. I'm so tired. I had to force myself to do the stream today, guys. I hope you're grateful. I had to dunk my face in sparkling water like 47 times. I actually was doing the ice face baths before this stream. I'm like, well, it's a trend. Might as well try it to wake myself up. But we had an EB meeting, an executive board meeting today. We had an executive board and Politburo meeting today. And then I've been basically working since I got up. And I just got back from Chicago for a party trip. Then had practice, slept, didn't sleep well. Woke up and worked in the morning. And by work, I mean I filmed that fake morning routine where I was rubbing bananas all over myself. But still, it was hard work, I tell you. Then I had to do wrestling and hard stuff and work. And now I'm here. Long story short, I'm tired. So cut me some slack. God bless. Thanks, Eddie. You guys don't actually have to thank me. Streaming is easy, but appreciate you. Speed donated 50,000 to Gaza. Yeah, that's the other thing. I shared that on my X account. I said this kid is awesome because he is. I've never seen anything bad about him. Also, UFC champion Bilal Muhammad. This was a while ago, but I just saw the video pop up again. He let a kid from Gaza who got his kneecap blown off by Israel, which, how senseless to blow off a child's kneecap. But of course, we know they've killed tens of thousands of kids now. But it's just so disgusting to see this kid walk with a limp now, his leg all messed up for no reason, just because he was born in a place that's being occupied and destroyed by this psychotic genocidal ethno-state. But anyways, Bilal Muhammad brought him over to the U.S. and took care of him and got him health care, got his knee operated on so the kid can walk. It's just really awesome. And the UFC refuses to put his country as Palestine on the UFC website. He's like one of the only fighters who doesn't have a country next to their name because they refuse to acknowledge Palestine. None of the MMA journalists will ask Bilal Muhammad about Palestine or his political views, even though it's a prominent part of his personality. And that's what happens when you stand up for good, and he's hated by a lot of the fans. He's hated by the UFC as an organization. They don't do promotion and marketing for him. And a lot of fans are just meatheads who are easily manipulated. They hate him, say he's boring, even though he's not. Watch his fights. He's not boring. He's very fun to watch. But anyway, shout out to him. Great guy. I was trying to help Jake Shields host his podcast with Bilal because he was going to do it in Chicago. And I knew some ACP people who had a music studio in Chicago. I'm like, we'll host it for you, bro, that I can meet Bilal. But Bilal ended up going to Vegas for the podcast. So that would have been great, though. Him yelling "free you" at a Palestinian kid was class. That's awesome. That's awesome. It's bedtime in the Midwest, just about 10:10. Thoughts on Sandhagen versus Figueiredo in Des Moines? I'm going, brother. I got tickets. Let's go. Yeah, I got tickets. It's gonna be lit. It's the same day as freestyle and Greco State for wrestling, so I'm gonna go coach my kids, watch the fights, wake up the next morning, hopefully not too tired, and coach the kids again. So it's going to be the best weekend of my life, pretty much. I cannot wait. Bo Nickel's fighting, too. My boy Bo, on his way to the title, I tell you what. Did you see the NCAA heavyweight championships? Eli, you want to come in for this one? I want to bring a real heavyweight to the stage. Did you watch?
It was crazy. It was crazy, man. That's a Olympic champion getting beat by U23 world champ. And I tell you what, that guy wrestled hard.
Yeah,
you have to.
He was determined as shit. I mean, he's always like that, though.
Yeah,
he's a badass guy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Hands down, one of the craziest things I've ever seen. I was there live when Brent Metcalf lost to Darian Caldwell. That was pretty crazy. Yeah. But I think last night takes the cake. I mean, it was like a movie, too, with Gable playing the heel and going up to him and saying, you can't fly the American flag because you're not an Olympic champ.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty disrespectful, to be honest.
It was. I think he was just pushing the storyline, though.
Yeah, probably.
Like creating the drama, which it did. And then Hendrickson won and wore the flag. I also thought it was interesting. People who don't know wrestling have no idea what we're talking about. But that was the most animated I've ever seen David Taylor.
Yeah.
He like mogged fucking Hendrickson. So yeah, that was awesome. All right, bye, Eli. Thoughts on MMA Guru? He's pretty based. Thank you for the super chat. That guy's not based. That guy's politics are horrible. He's like a European supremacist. He's like a Nazi. I don't mean to say that. He's not like an actual Nazi. You know, people overuse that word. But like that's where he leans. He's like super, super, super anti-Russian. Super pro-Europe and like Western liberal values and calls the Russians inbred when he's from the UK. You can't call Russians inbred when you live in the UK, the country that systematized inbreeding, the country that had all these royal families banging each other and having kids with like 37 teeth. And then, you know, you're ruled over by those people. You're their peasants. You're their slaves. You're ruled over by inbreds and you're calling the Russians inbred? Brother, especially when you look like the MMA Guru. The MMA Guru, if you haven't seen him, he's really tall, actually. He's a little bit built, but he looks like a gnome. He looks like a fat gnome. But I watch his show all the time because the dude's hilarious. He is super funny as hell. has good MMA takes sometimes, and he's able to, like, in MMA journalism, if you don't suck up to the UFC, they blackball you from the press conferences, and if you don't suck up to the fighters even, you won't get interviews with the fighters, which is the easiest way to grow your channel. So a lot of interviewers and journalists are afraid to say the truth because they don't want to offend anyone. The MMA guru plays the role of not sucking up to anybody, so he can say, his version of the truth, which oftentimes is the actual truth, without feeling bad about it, without having to hold back. So he's funny. I think in MMA, he's ultimately a force for good. His politics are horrible. I love to roast him and trash him on my MMA TikTok account, but I can't lie, the guy's entertaining. I watch his videos. LMAO, bro, come on, they marry their cousins. Stop. Hey, it's like their third cousins, okay? So chill. And it's not like they're living under kings who have, chins that jut out to the moon. Like, a lot of those European monarchs be looking like the Crimson Chin, but more twisted into a spiral. The royals are inbred AF. Yeah. MMA guru probably is too. That's why he's projecting it onto the Russians. I'm not saying the Dagestanis are perfect. I'm just saying their culture is superior to the West in every way. Send location. Send me location, MMA guru. I like MMA guru, but he is like, stupid guy. I smash him, brother. I teach him respect. This is supposed to be respect sport. What is this? You sit on Twitch? Talk shit, train. How about you come to gym? How about you come talk shit now? Talk shit at gym where I can smash MMA guru. Talk about inbred. Talk about inbred when you look like garden gnome. I smash you. King sausage fingers. Living in the UK is insufferable. Dude, that's what my buddy says. There's an ACP guy who's British who moved to Chicago. British to this point where he still speaks with a British accent. He's like, in America, like, people are anti-communist. Yes, they've been dosed with McCarthyism and told that communism is evil, and they bought into it for the most part. But at least they have, like, the spirit of 1776, the American Revolution. This anti-establishment spirit, the spirit in Thomas Paine's Common Sense, the founding father who wrote against monarchy and really wrote this super radical critique of monarchy that wasn't just like, here, it's bad for the British to be in charge because of this and that and the other, and here's how we could be doing better without the British. No, he undercut the entire theory, the entire idea of monarchy as a system in general. Like, why would we be ruled over by these inbreds? Just because one king is good doesn't mean his son isn't going to be a dumbass, especially because these royal families are isolated from the masses. They live in privilege. So what do they know about life for working class people? It was an extremely radical critique of monarchy at the time that set the nation on fire, and Americans loved it, right? That's part of the American spirit. We're anti-establishment. We're against, being ruled over and dominated by people who are out of touch and isolated from what it's like to be a working class person. In the UK, there's very much less of that. In the country that, that monarchy, or the country that was the origin of that monarchy that the US overthrew, that the US said, we're going to get rid of this shit. The UK still has that. They still have a king and a queen. Now, they don't have power. They're a liberal society, but they still have these feudal monarchs. They still worship and praise the queen. And that's what my friend from the UK says. He's like, a lot of people in the UK are just like submissive. They're like, oh, yes, of course we have to honor the king and queen. They're the king and queen. I am but a peasant. I shall go to work and come home and eat beans on toast and think about how wonderful the queen is and how much the queen deserves to live off my tax dollars while doing nothing. It's very much a British attitude of like servitude, and there's a more rigid hierarchy in their heads. Of course, I am at the bottom of the hierarchy. Sure, I work 12 hours a day, and my labor is what makes the entire society run. But the queen who sits on her ass and eats tea and crumpets with our tax dollars all day is above me and more important than me and distinguished. You know, that's a very British attitude that doesn't exist in America. So that's an extra hurdle for British communists they have to get over. They do have a long history of rebellion. You're right. You're right. But America's superior in every single way, and that's an objective fact, not my opinion. So, you're looking great. What's the diet looking like? Thank you very much. Well, I wake up every day, go right to McDonald's. I pound not one, but two meals, and then I come back and I puke myself. I'm bulimic. I'm struggling greatly. That's why I look great. Thank you. Just kidding. I don't have bulimia. Diet. I just try to eat. I just try to stop eating when I'm full. I work out a lot, obviously through wrestling, and then I like to lift and run too. So burn a lot of calories that way. I live an active lifestyle. I like to fast in the mornings, throw a Zinner in and just go work out. And I usually don't get hungry till about 12. And then I eat a lot of tuna, eat a lot of eggs, eat a lot of salads, eat a lot of fruit and berries. I eat a lot of yogurt, probiotics, good for the gut. Honey. I eat sandwiches too. And then I eat junk sometimes, but I don't eat like candy bars and stuff as much as I used to. Once you stop eating like preservatives and hyper processed shit, like you kind of stop craving it as much, I think. But yeah, I have tuna and eggs, bro. I have like 40 cans of tuna in my cupboard at all times, bro. That's gas. Eli agrees. I get soup too, because it's just easy to crack a can of soup, pour it in. But thank you for the super chat, by the way, comrade. How do we get the American people to stop being submissive to the lobbying class? A new common sense? Basically, yeah, you got to appeal to their common sense. You got to say, the problem with libertarianism is they want to get rid of the government. But the reason the government sucks is because it's controlled by corporations, right? Libertarians miss the root of the issue. They only see the surface. They see the government, which is inefficient and bad, but they don't realize the government's working the exact way that it's supposed to on behalf of the corporations. It's inefficient and bad for the working class, but it works very effectively when the corporations want to say overthrow the Iraqi government and steal all of their oil. Our government's very good at that. They're just not good at bringing us healthcare, but that's by design. And that's because the lobbying class and corporations and stockholders want to keep the healthcare system private. And they control the government through lobbying and campaign donations and the media and whatever else. So we got to point Americans to, what is common sense, which is the root of the issue. The root of the issue is Wall Street. It's the shareholder class. It's corporate America, the owning class. It's people like Bill Gates. And, regular Americans have different words for these people. They'll call them the globalists. They'll call them the elites. They'll call them the Jew. Just kidding. Just kidding. But you'll hear people use these words like globalists and elites a lot, and what they're referring to is the ruling capitalist class. So yeah, you just got to point that out and turn people against it, and then give people the path to changing it, which is join the Communist Party, organize your workplace, and organize your community. Libertarians also believe a lot of crazy shit about the Chinese government as a way to reinforce what they believe about our own. Yeah, that's very true, RJ. That's very true. That's why it's important to defend existing socialism as well and study it so you understand the gains that countries like China have actually made. Thank you, Michael Wickle, for the $5 super chat. Appreciate you, comrade. One thing we learned is that true change, if any, will come from the right outsider of Trump's cult Republicans quickly turn on and call out hypocrisies. True change, if any, will come from the right outside. Oh, I see. Of Trump's cult Republicans quickly turn on and call hypocrisies. I'm not sure I understand. But are you saying that MAGA has a lot of hypocrisies that'll prevent them from changing a lot for the better? I tend to agree. Although I think, as much as I'm not a fan of Elon Musk, I think Doge has done, things that are positive in terms of weakening the empire, like cutting USAID funding and stuff like that. But yeah, thank you for the super chat, buddy. Appreciate it. Any updates on when the ACP college and university organizations that Haas mentioned will be starting up? We're already starting them up, but if you're on a university campus, we need you, right? We need members of the party who are on campuses to help us establish a presence there. By recruiting new members. You can do that by tabling. You can set up tables where you promote the ACP. You can even do, communism is good for America. Prove me wrong. You do like a Steven Crowder type thing. But we need to establish a presence on college campuses. So. All right, y'all. It's been over an hour. The Eddie Liger Power Hour has once again gone about an hour and a half. I appreciate you all for joining me. Check out patreon.com/MidwesternMarks if you want to support the work that we're doing. Join our Discord server with the link in my bio. Follow us on other platforms and have yourself an excellent day. Oh my God, wait, one sec before we play the outro. Thank you, Elizabeth, for the $20 super chat. Thank you so much. That's huge. Double flex. Boom, boom, boom. What books are you currently reading? Capital Volume 3 is taking most of my energy right now. All my reading energy is going to that. I'm almost done. I've almost finished all 3 volumes of what Ingalls called the Bible for the working class. I'm going to be finished up with it soon. So, yeah, it's my favorite volume of Capital. It is, because Volume 1 is about production. Volume 2 is about circulation and the sale of the commodities that are created in production, the transformation of commodity value into money value. But then Volume 3 is about the reinvestment of that value in production. And it's about the credit system and rent, which, rent and creditors, people who trap us in debt, the big banks, dominate our economy and our society today. Volume 3 also talks about the stock market, which is a way for the ruling class to accumulate more wealth and monopolize more of the economy. So it's the most relevant book for understanding America today, and it's a great jumping off point to start reading contemporary Marxists like Michael Hudson. So yeah, I'm reading Volume 3, and I like it very much. But thank you for the great questions, everybody. Are you going to bring back the gaming streams? I was thinking about that today. Probably not, honestly. I would love to say yes, but I'm so busy. Maybe when I get my computer. But also, I don't spend that much time gaming, and when I do, I kind of like to relax and not have to, entertain anyone. But maybe I'll bring them back. Maybe just for you, Logan. Thank you for the $2 super chat, brother. Thank you, everybody, for your support. We'll talk to you on the next stream. Hopefully Noah and I will be able to do Midwestern Manifesto this weekend. Thanks to Eli for producing this episode. We'll see you on the next one.
Stand up, all victims of oppression, for the tyrants fear your might. Don't cling so hard to your possessions, for you have nothing if you have no right. Let racist ignorance be ended, for respect makes the empires fall. Freedom is merely privilege extended, unless enjoyed by one and all. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the world in the song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. Let no one build walls to divide us, walls of hatred nor walls of stone. Come greet the dawn and stand beside us. We'll live together or we'll die alone. In poisoned by exploitation. Those who have taken, now they must give, and end the vanity of nations. We've but one earth on which to live. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the world in the song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. And so begins the final drama, in the streets and in the fields. We stand unbowed before their armor, we defy their guns and shields. When we fight, provoked by their aggression, let us be inspired by life and love. For though they offer us concessions, change will not come